In a crowded market, standing out is crucial. Marketing expert Ann Bennett reveals the secret to grabbing attention with compelling hooks that interrupt the conversation in people's minds. Listen in to learn how to navigate the chaos and capture your audience's attention.
Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining me today. If you missed my last episode and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my social media pages as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when my podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Ann Bennett is the founder of Renegade Branding, an international speaker, best-selling author, coach, and brand profit builder. Ann uses her marketing and branding genius to help women entrepreneurs build their standout personal brands and boost their profits. Ann works with purpose-driven entrepreneurs who do transformational work so they can liberate and ignite their unique genius and authentic voice to build a profitable brand platform. So Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me so much, Candy. This is awesome. Thank you.
Well, I am glad to have you here today, too. Before I get into questions on the topic that we'll be discussing today, I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about your story and how you began working with business owners to help them stand out from the crowd.
Well, I was working for a long time in New York City. I lived out there 25 years. I'm originally from California, so it was a little bit like Surfer Girl Goes to Hell, Kid Goes to Hell. And I loved it out there. And I worked for all the major magazines in New York. And the last place I worked that I really loved was Vogue magazine. So I actually worked with Anna Wintour and some of the top editors and illustrators and photographers in the world. And, it was one of those clear September days in New York City. We used to call them the California days. And I was coming out of one of my favorite coffee stores, and I was on my way up Fifth Avenue. And I see these people looking up and to the left. So I look up and to the left to see the first plane hit the World Trade Center. Mm. And it was really in that moment, we've all had these moments of tragedy that have changed our lives forever. And for me, that was the big one. I really didn't care about the fashion industry very much after that whole thing occurred. And it just became like, what do I want to do with my life? And how do I want to help people and support people? How can I contribute? So that's when I decided to branch out and start my own business and work with entrepreneurs who really were heart-centered and wanted to make a difference in the world, to bring their talent, skills, and abilities to 6- and 7-figure businesses. So that's kind of how that all started. I had been, writing hooks and really dealing with branding through Vogue for 5 or 6 years there. And I really understand it's not being the best, it's being different. Mm. That's really what makes you stand out. At a certain point, we all have our talent, skills, and abilities come up to a particular level. So how do you distinguish yourself in the marketplace when it's so overcrowded and there's so many options, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what really struck me as, it's our 1% that actually distinguishes us from each other, our points of view, what breaks our hearts, what pisses us off, the things that, how we react to situations in our interpretation. So that became the cornerstone of how I work with my clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, why is it then that you have the mantra, the more fun I have, the more money I make?
I might sound a little serious today because to me, there's an energy that occurs when you're working with people, and it's
Mhm.
all about enjoyment, pleasure, and having a lot of fun. We all get terribly serious about, what it is we do and how important it is and all that. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't generate excitement or attraction necessarily.
Mhm.
I wrote a book called Laughing Your Way to Loving Yourself in
Mhm.
12 Steps, 7 Habits, 4 Agreements, and 1 Cup of Veggie Soup for the Soul. It's totally irreverent about the 12 steps and the 4
Mhm.
agreements and all this stuff. And it supplies some wisdom. But I felt like as entrepreneurs, you know, it's tough. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's challenging. It's a growth and development program. And if we could laugh and bring humor and have fun and be silly, that's when the magic actually happens. That's when the
Mhm.
grace and ease and the flow starts to occur.
Right. Well, I think some people have that innate ability to do that easily, and then some people maybe are more reserved or, maybe afraid of what people are going to think of them. So what would you say to someone who's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I understand what you're saying, but it's harder maybe in my industry or my personality sometimes is a little bit harder
Yeah,
to get out of my shell and do that. What would you say to encourage them?
sure. My introverts are my favorites. My introverted geeks are like my favorite. And in my archetype quiz, which your listeners will be able to take to distinguish what they are, you're either a nurturer, disruptor, innovator, or a geek. And of course, for disruptors, it's a little bit easier to be silly and be kind of out there. And
Mhm.
for the nurturers and for the geeks, it's a little more challenging, if you will. But
Mhm.
what I would say for the introverted folk is you guys are the best networkers ever.
Mm.
Because you just ask questions and you listen. People will not become more interested than they are in themselves.
Mhm.
They just are like, oh my God, if you ask them a bunch of questions, all of a sudden they love you. They think they know you really well. And actually, they don't know you at all. You've just
Mhm.
asked a bunch of questions for them. But I think, the thing about us is we have a tendency to think that the way somebody else is better than the way we are. And we
Mhm.
have this tendency to think, well, they're the ones that are, the rock star or they're outgoing and gregarious and charismatic and I'm not. But the truth really is everyone has their attraction factors.
Mhm.
Everyone has them. They're all different. They're not the same. And those personalities attract the people that they really need to be with, and that makes your life really fun and really simple because you're not struggling to get something. You're really
Mhm.
on the giving side all the time, so you're just giving and being your authentic self and your personality, and people fall in love with that.
Mhm. Well, I think authenticity, like you just mentioned that, I think that's really important. And sometimes we feel we have to be like someone we see and it doesn't feel comfortable for us. And then they can tell, right, that that's not who we are. And then that doesn't attract the right people to us.
Yeah, we have an innate, what I call the BS meter. And we can't see our own eyebrows, but other
Mm.
people can see us very clearly. As you can say to somebody, yeah, it just doesn't feel right. We have this kind of sensibility, this intuition, or like somehow that didn't land, or I don't really like that. And we decide all these things in the first 3 seconds of actually meeting somebody.
Mhm.
You either like them or you don't like them. You can kind of, you might hear something, they might say something, and you like them a little bit more. But your first impression is usually the strongest and very difficult to break. That's why
Mhm.
branding is so important because a brand speaks for you. It actually sets the impression and the mood for you.
Mhm.
And so you don't have to do very much in that way. I like to say the brand actually makes your decisions for you. What
Mm,
kind of marketing will you do? How will you show up? Should you be a podcast interview person? Should you be a blogger? Should you make video? It's all being dictated by the brand and what you feel is really in alignment with who you are.
mhm. Well, a few minutes ago, you quickly mentioned archetypes, and I would love for you to maybe go into, again, say what they are and what are some characteristics of each of those. And then how would we use what we determine is ours to actually help us be seen in the world?
Mhm. Great, great. So I've divided them into four. There's many different ways that people do this. I created my own, so I call them the Renegade brand archetypes. You're either a nurturer, disruptor, innovator, or geek. The nurturer is the kind of person that they're like the girl next door or the guy next door, and they are the kind of person that you just immediately feel like, did I meet you before? Do I know you? Or you want to give them a hug? Or the kind of, I use Oprah as a classic icon for this
Mhm,
particular archetype, but it could be, any other person that you feel like, oh, they're just so warm and fuzzy, and they're kind of spiritual and they're community oriented. They have really big hearts. Those are the nurturing type of personality. And a lot of times, I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and they're always like, well, I'm a mom, so I'm a nurturer.
mm,
Yeah, you have that characteristic. I'm not saying you're not a good mom. I'm just saying there might be something else that's more upfront that you lead
mhm,
with naturally. And sometimes it isn't being a nurturer. So that's your nurturer types. And how you would apply this is when you're thinking about, how do I want to speak? You're going to be very loving in your approach, very non judgmental, very open. So, how that applies to your photography is, you think about Oprah. She's always wearing these warm, fuzzy, kind of open neck types of things, right? Which gives you the sense of open, warm, tactile, you know, beautiful color, things like that. That's kind of part of what it would look like if you were looking a certain way. If you're speaking, you wouldn't really say what breaks your heart and what pisses you off. It's more of a disruptor attitude, right? So you would say, what do you really care about? What would you love in your life? How would it make you feel if, imagine if you could have any of those kinds of ways of speaking, really brings in more of a nurturing way of being, right? Tell me
mhm,
about that. How does that feel for you? What do you think? Is it good? No, that kind of thing would be more the nurturer. The disruptor, who's more like me, would be like, you know, well, it doesn't matter how you feel, just go do it.
mm,
Would be more like what they would say, right? They'd be like, hey, come on, let's just go do what we know is great to do. They're very creative. They're people who love to upset the status quo, present a little bit out of the box in terms of the way they think might be trending or very innovative. They're like the Elon Musk, is a classic disruptor. Guys putting cars on Mars, and
mm.
doing all these crazy, crazy things. People love him and they hate him.
Right.
And that's a very strong brand, right? I like to use Madonna because she had that influence in the 80s, that I was in New York and I got to see her play and stuff like that in the 80s. It was super fun. So you're an innovator if you're someone who's really looking to improve something or change something and bring an idea into the future, from the future into the present. Kind of like, I like to use Steve Jobs as someone who, we couldn't wait to see what he was doing next. He would like reach into his pocket and he'd
Mm,
pull out, a little gadget, and we'd all be like on the edge of our chairs, right? So, innovators are also creative, but they create for creativity's sake. They don't create for upset. Like
mm,
a disruptor is like, yeah, they're more like a freedom fighter. type of personality where an innovator can be understated and very kind of under the radar, but their ideas are really big, and they usually have a team that they're like the visionary, if you will, of the whole thing. And their team actually are the ones implementing. They're the ones dreaming. So it's a little bit different. Or you're a geek, which are my favorite. They're people who love to have a plan. They love to research things, understand how they work, break them down into their simplest form. Spreadsheets are their go-to all the time. So they know everything that's happening, right? And I love those people, especially for creatives like myself, because we need some structure for our wacky, crazy ideas, right? So having a geek is fantastic, right? Especially around money, running your business systems, things like that. So those are the personality styles. Doesn't mean you don't have other aspects. All it means is when you come through the door, the first thing people do is they go, oh, they're a geek. And you're kind of like, I know my geeks are a little bit like, well, it'd be so much cooler if I was a disruptor. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not who you really are. And the truth of it is people are attracted to you because of who you really are. So when you can own it, I like to say for my clients, my goal is for everyone to own, honor, and unleash who they actually are so that they're seen as that. And we can just go, oh, yeah, I have to be with, Candy because she's such a geek. Or I have to be with her because she's such a nurturer. I need that in my business, right? Or I need that in my life. And that's kind of how that works. The conversation would be different. The messaging is different from a geek than it is a disruptor, right? Disruptors are kind of like, yeah, statistics are disruptors are like logic. Do we need it or not? They're kind of like that. Geeks are like, well, let me show you the stats. This is one of my friends is a total geek, and she's like, well, I was going to break up with my husband, so I made a spreadsheet and I gave him option A and option B and said, you choose. That's a very geeky kind of way to approach something, right? It's very systematized, where, disruptors certainly would be a lot more passionate and emotional, if you will, about. So that's kind of how you start to apply it and really appreciate who you are. Because it's powerful just to be who you are. We were sitting around the dinner table last night, 5 or 6 women, people I'd never met. It was like a potluck. And they were all talking about being who you are, loving who you are, appreciating who you are, and having those characteristics and that knowledge of yourself is the driving force to your life and your business.
Well, and we've always heard as well to think about who you want to market to and what they need to hear. So how do you apply this then if we know our personality types, but we want to reach, that client in the right way too? Like, how do you kind of put those two together?
That's a really great question. So putting it together, everyone has a different language that they respond to, right? Like, it's like we have our different ways that we actually learn things. So when you're thinking about it, you're naturally going to attract people like you, naturally. So there's that group. So if you're a disruptor, you're going to naturally, I attract all the rebels. It's just easy, right? They see me and they're like, I am going right there, right? But for like a geek or someone else, they're going to attract people that either need that characteristic more strongly or already are like that. So I know in classic marketing, it's like, well, what does your client want? And sell them what they want and talk to them the way they talk. And da, 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 da. From my point of view, because I'm a disruptor, I'm like, no, it's not really like that. It's you actually focus on yourself. You focus in very tightly on your stories, your life, things that bother you, and that will ripple out, like that microcosm of your life will ripple out to the macrocosm of everyone else. It's like the smaller you get, the bigger you get.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
it's really about you and about it's not so much like, oh, I think they need this. When you're doing marketing research, you can say, well, what would you like to learn? Or what do you think your biggest problem is? All of that works in the research category. But when you're building a brand, it's about becoming more of who you are in a bigger way so people can see you in the marketplace. It's not about them, actually. It's about you. So it's a little bit different in its orientation.
Perfect. So, and I know you talked earlier about you're really good at creating hooks and getting the attention. And so, can you, for someone who maybe doesn't even understand what that is, define what a hook is, and then say, why are they so important to our success?
So I call them head whipping hooks because they make you go like stop, right? And take a double take. Have you ever seen something out in public and you're like, I can't believe I just saw that. Or I can't believe
Right.
that person just said that, right? It's like, it like interrupt. We're so busy, right? Here's the thing. The biggest problem with all of us right now is time. We don't have any time. Or we say we don't have any time. Oh, relationship, I don't have any time for that. My marriage, I don't have time for that. My kids, no time for that. It's like, guys, you gotta prioritize, and B, you gotta put into succession, how do I use the time that I have for the biggest impression, right? So a head whipping hook is simply 3 or 4 words, less than 15 words, that interrupts what's going on up here for another person. So they're used to hearing certain things like, oh, and sometimes we want to hear the same thing over and over, like music. We like to hear the same songs and sing the words and things like that. So you want to make an impression so that people repeat the word. So remember this, show me the money? That was over 20 years ago. People are still saying, show me the money. That's a very, very strong hook, right? So it's like any of those things that you recall from, I think I watched that movie once. And we're all saying it, show me the money, show me the money. And you want to be able to build those into your business so that people stop, because we've got so many options now. And with AI, it's going to get, the level of mediocrity is going to rise. There's going to be so much more content coming at you. Why would you pay attention to it unless it causes you to stop, either laugh or curiosity or novelty, something that, we could watch stupid cat videos all day long, right? I'm like, please don't send me TikTok, all right? I tell my friends, please don't do that because I have to focus on my work today. But a hook is something that will grab attention immediately and allow somebody to at least interrupt their conversation for a few moments and go, oh, I got to read that email because the title was, I give up or I quit. And you're like, oh, what's the problem here, or what's going on here? I just finished doing a webinar. Actually, I have one, I'm doing it tonight, one more webinar. It's called 6-Figure Soundbite Formula. And I talk about what causes people to pause on something and notice it. And that's what a head whipping hook does. Mine, I help clients write like hooks and also titles for their talks, their signature talks, as well as, their taglines and things like that. And mine is liberate your rebel spirit and rake in the revenue. And all I do is have to say that if I'm networking. I don't really go into, well, here's my 6 steps, and here's what I
Mhm.
do, and here's all the modalities I do it in. I don't really go into that because that isn't what's going to attract people.
Mhm. Well,
Right?
just those words, like you said, the disruptor, right? Someone will hear that too, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's me," right? I'm that
Mhm.
rebel.
Yeah. Or they go, I
Mhm.
don't really feel like a rebel. And I'll
Mhm.
go, really? And are you an entrepreneur?
Mhm.
You have an inner rebel that caused you to become an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you'd
Mhm.
be working in corporate.
Working for corporate, yeah,
You'd be
right?
working for the man, and that'd be how that is, and you'd be totally fine with it. So,
Mhm.
sometimes we don't recognize our own selves, and that's where the archetypes really help people to go, oh, I thought I was a nurturer, but I'm actually a geek.
Mm.
That happens to some of my friends.
Mhm. So, are there any other tips, that you want to give to the listener to help them implement the information that you've been sharing to help them get seen in the world? Because as entrepreneurs, too, we want to be successful and we don't always know what we should be doing.
Yeah, I think it's great because there's so many things to do, right? And now the options are getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. And now it's like everyone's running to AI to
Mhm.
answer their questions and to make it easier. And it's an interesting phenomena. Some of it is great and some of it is not. But I think for everyone, the biggest key is, what do I like to do?
Mm.
Like if you're trying to choose a social channel, it's like, do I like LinkedIn? Do I feel like my people are there? I just love being over there and spending my time there. Then go there and only do one at a time. I would do one
Mhm.
period and master it. I have something called study hall that I do on Friday mornings. It's just an open community to anybody. And I can send you the link for that so you can share it with people. But I always tell people one thing, do one thing and one thing only and master that. And everything else will come along. Because what we do as entrepreneurs is we go into this, oh, I got to do a blog, and then I got to do a vlog, and I got to do video, and I got to do AI, and I got to do all the stuff, or I'm going to, and you don't know what to
Mhm.
do. So I think that the key, again, coming back to yourself, some people love to be on video. Oh, yeah, video, that's great. Other people are like, oh, are like, no way.
Mhm.
Are more quieter people. Sometimes they can learn to relax about it a little bit and do it, and other times, they'd rather not be seen, which is okay too.
Mhm.
You can build a six-figure business and not be seen.
Right. Lots
You
of
gotta
people
be
did it before video.
Yeah, that's what
Mhm.
people did. So it's totally possible. What we have now is a tremendous amount of options. So you want to
Mhm.
sit down and start with your own personality. What do I like? Start with what you like, because there's a learning curve on all of it. So,
Mhm.
you know, you want to just start where you are and realize that, when Oprah started, she was really crummy at it. She was not good at it. In fact, she got fired a lot and told she should never be on camera.
Mm.
Okay. The Beatles were told, we don't need another boy band. People are told all these things. So you have to kind of allow to let that go and not take it as the gospel truth. Right.
Mhm.
And go, well, what do I want to do? Who do I want to impact? And how do I want to serve them? And then where do I
Mhm.
find them in large numbers and inexpensively? For me, that's always been speaking, either live or virtual or video or whatever it is. So you want to start with something that's exciting and fun for you because you'll learn it quicker. Children learn the fastest because they're excited about everything
Mhm.
and they don't know, they have no history of, oh, I've fallen down off my bike 2 million times, so I'm never going to learn to ride a bike. They just learn. They just
Mhm.
forget they fell down 200 times, right?
Right.
And I think as adults, we get that's again, if you can be more playful and
Mhm.
go, you know what? Failing is all part of the game. It's all part of where the learnings come from, where
Mhm.
I improve from is these things that don't really work. So giving things, there's that fine line, but you want to give things enough time to see them working.
Mhm.
And sometimes our attention span is like a small goldfish. So we're like, oh, I did that. Relationships, I did that once. It's
Mhm.
kind of like
Mhm.
that. It's
Well, I
like,
know this has been a great discussion. I know we're running out of time, but I would love to ask if you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners. And if they have more questions and they want to connect with you, how can they find you?
yeah, totally reach out to me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook a lot, and Bennett Marketing. And the offer is to take the Renegade brand archetype quiz, find out what archetype you are. I'm also doing a 6-week masterclass called Rebel Brand Formula, which is coming up. So if you're interested in that, take the quiz and you'll get on my list, and you'll be able to, you'll be invited to do any of the master classes that I do periodically. And it'd be great if
Mhm.
you have any questions. How does it work for you? You can reach out to me on my website, annbennettmarketing.com. It's ANNBENNETT marketing.com. And I'd love to connect. I love talking to people and understanding what they're up to.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for being a guest on my show today and talking on this topic with me and educating listeners and talking about the archetypes that you've, created and how that can be used in marketing. It's been very informative.
Thank you for having me, Candy.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. I hope you found this topic interesting and enjoyed the informative discussion. Would you please share my show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform? I'd really appreciate your support. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to my guest at any of the links that they shared, or you could send me a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join me for my next interview. And remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. This episode is sponsored by Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll Services. If you are overwhelmed trying to handle the financial aspects of your business, AB&P is here to help. Contact us today to discuss your needs at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.